Hello everyone and welcome to our first Fusion 360 tutorial. We're going to start out by opening up Fusion 360 here. Once you get the software opened up, it will probably ask you to log into your Autodesk account, which you should already have. If you don't have an account, then make sure you set it up through this process. I definitely recommend using your personal email address because of the firewall can stop emails coming through for your school or work account. So make sure you're using your personal email address. And then it will probably ask you to create a team or join a team. You can just create your own team for right now. You don't need to join anyone else's team. We may do that later on, but for right now, just open up your own private team and you can practice your Fusion skills through that. If you open up the tutorial, it'll look something like this. I've gone through and added screenshots of each of the components that's important, what your constraints and everything look like. I also would encourage you to read through this section here where it has each of the different types of constraints that we'll be working with today and what they do. However, in the software, I'll show you in a bit, it does define them at each step. So if you want to read it that way, you can as well. But you definitely need to be familiar with the different types of constraints in order for any of this to make sense. So to start out, we are going to create a sketch by using this button here. You'll see that if you hover over it long enough, it'll give you a definition and then some images to go along with it. So we'll click here, and then we want to select this work plane here that has your X and your Y axis like this. It should rotate it to where you're looking perpendicular just at that profile. Over here, you've got some sketch palette options where we can show some different features of our sketch. Up here along the top, we have some constraints that will modify your sketch or restrict it to behave a certain way. Over here, we've got some things that will modify it in different aspects other than just like restricting it, and then how we create things over here. So we're going to start out with just creating a line. If you scroll with your mouse, you can zoom in and out. And then if you press the scroll of your mouse, it'll pan you across your screen without having to use this navigation cube over here. So I'm just going to draw a four-sided closed figure polygon shape like this. Yours might look a little different than mine, and I know that mine definitely looks a little different than the example that we're given here. So it looks different, doesn't really matter. But in a program like Fusion, you're just going to start with a rough sketch, and then we'll go in and refine it by using our constraints. Whereas a program like AutoCAD, you want to make sure that you're drawing it correctly from step one. So just get a rough sketch like this, and then press escape to get out of that command. If you click on the corners and the lines, you'll see these little symbols that pop up. This just means that there are constraints present here. This is a concentric or coincident constraint, which means that they share the same endpoints. If you can't see these, then look over here in your sketch palette window. You'll see show constraints. You can uncheck that or check it. To see them, you'll have to make sure you check it and then go around and click on all of your corners. You want to make sure that there are no other constraints present other than that coincident constraint. If you see anything else there, then make sure that you delete it. So the first thing that we're going to do, if we look back at our tutorial, is we want to add a horizontal constraint to the bottom line of your sketch. So unlike a program like AutoCAD, where you pick a line and then you make it do different things, this is the opposite. So you want to pick the constraint that you want to apply. So what kind of restriction do you want on your sketch, and then click the thing you want it to apply to. So if you click this drop down box here, you will see that all of your different types of constraints are popping up. It has grayed out any of them that we can't use at the moment. So you want to find the horizontal or vertical one, select that, and we want to make this bottom line, we want to make this bottom line horizontal like that. Then looking back, our next thing is to add a fixed constraint to the bottom corner. Your fixed constraint looks like this. Again, you can hover and it'll tell you what that constraint does. And so we want to fix this corner here. Scrolling through, we're going to add a perpendicular constraint between the bottom line and the line on the right, and then a fixed constraint on the line on the right. So I want a perpendicular between here and here, and then I want a fixed constraint on here. Then I want to add a parallel constraint between the bottom and the top line, and a vertical constraint on the line to the left. So a parallel looks like this, top and bottom, and then a vertical for here. The next thing we're going to do is add some dimensions. So if you look here, we've got the dimension command, or you can press D on your keyboard. So we'll press this D, select this bottom line, drag it out, click and release again. This is not good. If you get this window here, it says that I've over constrained my sketch, which is probably because I locked this earlier. So just be careful with what things you put and where you put them. So I'm going to click this line here. And redraw it. I tried to delete my lock command, but or my fixed constraint, but it wasn't. So now let's see if I can dimension this. There we go. So now it works. We want to make this one 4, and then we're going to dimension over here as well, and we want that one to be 3. And then once you've done that, you've finished this sketch. So you can see we just drew a rough sketch, added some constraints, and then we finished. So for the next part, we're going to draw an additional sketch. So we scroll down through here. You'll see all of the things that I just showed you. Now we're down here to our next sketch. We want to draw this shape. You can do this however you want to. You can finish the sketch and create a new one, or you can just zoom out and draw it over here. Whichever, I don't have a preference for you for this one specifically. As we go through other ones down the road, it will matter, but for right now, it doesn't really matter. For good practice, I'm just going to finish the sketch, and then I'll create another sketch on the same surface. That way they're isolated from one another. So then I'm going to make that oval-ish diamond shape. You can draw wherever you want to. I'll just draw over here. So to create this object, I'm going to use the line command. I'm going to click and release, drag my mouse up this direction, no specific spot, click and release again. And I'm going to click, hold, and drag my mouse to create an arc and release. And then I will click and release again, click and release again, click, hold, and drag to make that arc and release. Click and release again, click, hold, and drag and release. Click and release again, click, hold, and drag back to our starting point like that. I was doing something funky over here, so if we have any issues later, that is why. For looking at the directions, it says that we want to show all of our constraints and delete anything except for the tangent constraints. So coming back here, I'm going to delete these like that. And then you want to make sure you have a tangent constraint on each side of the arc. So there should be one on both sides. So I'm going to add a tangent constraint, selecting the arc and the straight line, the arc and the straight line, and then the arc and the straight line. And so now I have a tangent constraint on each side of the arc. Continuing on, we're going to add a fixed constraint to the center point of segment 1. If you look up here, you'll see that they are labeled. So this arc here is segment 1, and we want a fixed constraint on the center point of that, which is right here. These 4 points here are the center points of each of the arcs. So this one goes here, this one with this one with this, and then this one goes with this one. This would be segment 1, and we want to fix this. So clicking the fix constraint, make sure you're selecting the center point, and the center point turns green, not the arc itself. That'll create some major issues going forward if you don't just lock the center point in place. So going back, we are going to add a horizontal constraint between this point, and then a vertical constraint between this point and this point. And then we'll add equal constraints to the top and bottom arc, and then another equal constraint to the left and the right. So let's make this and this horizontal, and then this top one and this bottom one vertical. And now I've already got some issues, so let's see if I can fix that by dragging this out some. So they switched up on themselves. So I'm going to try to fix it as best I can. And that is for sure making it worse. So I'm going to undo all of that. And then I'm going to bypass a little bit to hopefully make it stay in place. So if that happens to you, it just twisted up on itself, so just be mindful of that. It may help if you just adjust it so that they're already a little bit more vertical, and then add the constraint in there, and hopefully that time, or hopefully this time, it won't twist it up. Try it again. If you mess it up, it's okay, just undo it. There, that fixed it. So if yours twists up, then just undo it. Try to move it to where it's supposed to be first, and then constrain it. Little things like that happen all the time, and that's okay. All right, so next we're going to add those equal constraints. We want the top and the bottom arc to be equal, and then the right and the left to be equal. And then we're going to go in and add our dimensions. So let's go create a dimension. So from this center point to this point here should be 2. Okay, I've already got some issues, and that is okay. I'll undo with that, and I'm just going to leave that here for now. And then from here to here, we need a dimension as well. Okay. And I'll go back in and add those values in a bit. So we'll go from here to here, and then we'll go from here to here as well. And I'm going to pull this on the other side just so it doesn't get confused with this one. So this 3.5, so the vertical between the top and the left and right one should be 0.25. Hopefully it doesn't do anything crazy. And then this one should be 0.5. And then this 3.9 should be 2. And then this 7 should be 4. And then if we zoom in, we're going to add a dimension on the arc here. Looking back at my dimensions, the top and bottom one should be 2, and the left and right should be 1. So I'm going to make this 2. And then make these 1. So try to just be patient. with yours as you're working through it. If you make a mistake, then just undo it and try it again. If it's starting to look a little distorted, try to hold tight and keep moving forward. And as you adjust it, hopefully it'll take the shape it's supposed to. And if it doesn't, then delete it and try it again and just be a little more careful the next time. So again, keeping good practice, I'm going to finish this sketch. That'll finish this first one. And then we're going to come over and create this shape. So I will start a new sketch here. You can draw wherever you want to. I'm going to just start here on the bottom, just guessing. Oh, that's going the wrong direction, so I'm just going to undo it. Still going the wrong direction, which is fine. So I'll just come back, work my way back around. Okay, well my typical arc method isn't working that great, so instead I'm just going to draw a circle. And I'll draw another circle here, like that. And then here's a neat little button we can trim. So you can trim the bottom of the circle off, and then you can trim the other side of this line off, just to make it work. We also have, hopefully, an extend button. So here's an extend, and I can extend this line to this circle here, and then I can trim it off just like I did up above, like that. And so now it looks more like the shape that it was supposed to. Now I'm going to add some constraints. So I want the bottom arc, or the top arc and the bottom arc to be the same. I want their center points to be vertically aligned. I want this right and this left line to be centered, or to be equal to one another. I want this bottom line and this top line to be equal. This top line and this bottom line to be equal, and then the top right and the top left to be equal as well. So once you get those equal constraints added in there, you just need a couple dimensions. Looking here, you can see that everything in parentheses means that that is a driven or an understood dimension, which means that they made this 2 and then made all of these other things equal to that 2, including the arc. So I'm going to go back in and add an equal constraint between this and this. Okay, so it doesn't let me do that on this one specifically in this program. So I'll just add a dimension here and here. So I need to make this arc 2. Because of the equal constraint, it'll make this one 2 as well. I need this line to be 2. Because of the equal constraint, it'll make this, 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 and this 2 as well. I need the overall width of the shape to be 8. And then the height is 2.5. So 2.5 for this dimension. And then that completes this shape. So again, in good practice, I'll finish my sketch. Now I have 2 of them here. I'll start another sketch, which brings us to sketch 4, which is this shape here. Again, I'm just going to guess for now and make a heart shape. So I'm going to draw here and here. Click, hold, drag. And that gave us a spline instead. Let's try this way, click, hold, drag, and then there we go. So I've got kind of a heart shape here. So I want this line to be vertical and that one to be horizontal. And then I want a coincident constraint between the center of this arc and this line, hopefully, maybe not, a collinear, which that's not working either. So we're going to come back to that one. I'll make this arc and this arc equal to one another. I want this line and this line to be equal to one another. And then I want the radius of the arc to be 2. Like that. And then because of where the center points are, that's why it looks distorted. I'm going to lock this corner or fix this corner so I can move the other things around. And this center point needs to come down here, but it's looking like I can't do that. In this program. So for now, just leave this one here like that. And then that leaves us here with this shape here. So again, I'm just going to guess. For good practice, finish my sketch. I know our heart doesn't look exactly the way it's supposed to, but we'll come back to that. I think I forgot this dimension too. So while I'm here, I'll show you how to edit a sketch. So if you click this arrow here, you can see our other sketches here. You'll see this one has a lock and this one has a lock, which means the shape was fixed in place, which means these bottom two were not. So I can double click to edit, and to make this one fixed in place, you can just lock one of the corners down and then finish that sketch and it will update it. And then this one here, we're missing a dimension on one of the lines. It doesn't matter which one because they have an equal constraint. That needs to be 3. And then just because of the center points, it's not letting me fix it. So we'll come back to that later, and then you can finish your sketch. And then our last one, draw one more final sketch. Again, we're just going to estimate with the shape. They don't have to be perfect when you start out, so looking kind of like a rocket. And then you want to add these dimensions to it to make it take this shape. I would recommend adding some equal constraints there and there if you can. And then we want this line to be 5. We want from this line to this center to be 2.5, which is over constrained probably because of my equal constraints, which is fine. And then we want the length of this to be 1. And then we want the angle between these two lines to be 45. I'm going to zoom in so we can see a little better from here to here to be 45. And since the bottom and the top have an equal constraint on them, they should be the same. Like it should adjust itself. I'm going to double check, and it did, which is why it over constrained it. And so now we're just missing the 9 here and the 1.79, but you'll see that that's in parentheses, which should mean that it's a driven constraint and is assumed. So from here to here is 9. And then you can just check by adding a dimension here. You can see that number is already there. because it's assumed that it couldn't be anything else. And then to lock it in place, we'll add that fixed constraint down here in a corner, and you'll see it changes everything to black, which locks it in place. So again, finish that sketch, and you can see all of them here at one time. If you ever need to modify a sketch, click this arrow and you can go in and edit them like that. I'm missing something here. So I'll check my dimensions. We've locked that one in place, and now you can see it's locked. The only one that was an issue was the heart one, and we'll come back to that later. So that finishes it. So to turn it in, we're going to click up here under File, and then we're going to click Share and choose a public link, and then you'll get the link there. Copy and paste that and place it into Canvas for your submission.